I never thought I would find myself writing something like this. My name is Jake, and I've been married to my wife, Amanda, for nearly 6 years. We were that picture-perfect couple, or at least I thought we were, the ones everyone envied. Amanda was beautiful, smart, and successful in her career. I was proud of her and thought we had a solid foundation for our future together. But lately, things felt off. The signs had been subtle at first. Amanda was always busy with work, often coming home late with vague explanations about meetings and projects. I tried to be understanding, but there was something about her demeanor that began to raise red flags. She had become distant, almost withdrawn, and I could sense a barrier between us that hadn't been there before. It was like she was physically present but emotionally checked out. I started noticing small things that didn't sit right with me. Her phone would constantly buzz with notifications, and she would quickly silence it, hiding it away whenever I walked into the room. I brushed it off as paranoia at first. After all, was I being unreasonable? But deep down, that nagging feeling was building. I couldn't shake it off. One evening, while Amanda was in the shower, I decided to do something I never thought I would do. I looked at her phone. I felt like a total jerk, but my gut was screaming at me. There were tons of messages from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was just some work colleague, but as I scrolled through the messages, my heart sank. They were flirty, intimate, and left no room for doubt. I stumbled upon a message that said, "Can't wait to see you again tonight. Just you and me." My world shattered in that instant. I sat there feeling a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion. I tried to process what I had just discovered, but my mind raced. The worst part was the realization that the person she was cheating with was my therapist, Dr. Harris. I felt sick. This was a man I had trusted, a professional who was supposed to help me navigate my struggles. I couldn't believe it. When Amanda emerged from the shower, she looked refreshed and oblivious to the storm brewing in the living room. I confronted her in a way I can only describe as a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "Who is this guy? Why are you texting him like this?" The look on her face was a mix of surprise and defiance. She opened her mouth to speak, but it felt like an eternity before she managed to form words. "What are you talking about, Jake?" she asked, feigning innocence, but I knew better. "The messages, don't play dumb with me. I know you're cheating on me." I shouted, my voice trembling. Felt like I was in a movie and I couldn't believe what was happening. Her reaction was infuriating. Instead of remorse or guilt, she laughed, a bitter, mocking laugh that sent chills down my spine. "You really think I would cheat on you? You've just been imagining things, Jake. You're paranoid," she exclaimed, crossing her arms defensively. The audacity of her words felt like daggers. She didn't even try to deny it outright. She just deflected, manipulating my feelings and making me question my sanity. In that moment, I felt my heart plummet into the depths of despair. I couldn't believe this was the woman I had loved so fiercely. The person I thought I knew had vanished, replaced by this cold stranger. The emotional impact was immense, anger mixed with profound sadness. I had given her everything, and now I was left questioning my worth. But as the night progressed, I realized I needed to take control of my life. I had grieved enough for a relationship that was already dead. I refused to let her lies define me. This was my turning point, my chance to rise above the betrayal. I just had to figure out how to do it. As I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, a plan began to form in my mind. I would find true healing and strength, not just for myself, but to ensure she wouldn't get away unscathed. This was about to be a transformative journey, one I never expected to embark on, and I was ready to embrace it. The days that followed the confrontation with Amanda were a blur. I felt like I was living in a fog, navigating through a world that had become utterly foreign to me. The emotional roller coaster was relentless. One moment I was filled with anger, picturing her with my therapist, and the next I was drowning in sadness, mourning the relationship I thought we had. The betrayal was an ache that settled deep in my chest, and I couldn't shake it. I had thought about reaching out to friends, but I was embarrassed. How could I explain this? The thought of them hearing that I was not only betrayed by my wife, but also by a person I trusted made my stomach churn. Instead, I decided to turn inward and focus on myself. After all, if Amanda was going to continue down this path of deceit, I needed to find a way to heal on my own. That's when I decided to hit the gym. I had always enjoyed working out, but I had let it fall by the wayside as Amanda and I got comfortable in our marriage. I dove back into it, pumping iron and running miles on the treadmill until my body was drenched in sweat. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could release the pent-up anger and frustration that was consuming me. The gym became a space where I could channel my heartbreak into something productive. I also started journaling. It felt cathartic to put my feelings down on paper, to give them a physical form rather than letting them swirl around in my head. I wrote about my pain, my anger, and my hopes for the future. Each entry felt like a step toward reclaiming the parts of myself that Amanda's betrayal had stolen. It was in these moments of reflection that I began to realize something profound. I had allowed Amanda to define my happiness for far too long. As I continued my routine, I noticed a shift in my mindset. I began to feel empowered. I was no longer just the nice guy who always put his wife first. I was reclaiming my identity, and while the hurt of Amanda's actions still lingered, I was determined not to let it consume me. I wanted to find strength in the ashes of my shattered marriage. It was during one of these early morning workouts when I decided to reach out to a friend who had gone through his own relationship troubles. Brian had always been a good listener, and I felt like I could trust him with my pain. After a few texts back and forth, we arranged to meet up for coffee. When I finally told him everything that had happened, his expression shifted from surprise to concern. "Dude, I'm so sorry," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You deserve so much better than that. I can't believe she did that to you." It felt good to finally voice my feelings to someone who understood the weight of betrayal. Brian encouraged me to focus on my own growth, to turn this painful experience into a catalyst for change. "Use this moment to redefine yourself, man," he urged. "You can either let her break you or let it ignite a fire in you. Choose the latter." Those words stuck with me. I realized that I had the power to determine my own path, and the first step was cutting Amanda out of my space. I decided to take a hard line with her. I began by being more distant around the house. I stopped engaging in her attempts to charm me back or deflect blame. I refused to be the emotional punching bag she had turned me into. It was tough. Amanda would throw tantrums, trying to invoke guilt in me, but I stood my ground. I was tired of her manipulations and lies. One evening, as we sat across from each other at the kitchen table, she attempted to reach out. "I miss us, Jake," she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. "Can't we just work through this?" The audacity of her words struck me as I looked into her eyes. I could see a flicker of vulnerability, but beneath it all was the same controlling, bitchy woman I had confronted days ago. "You had your chance, Amanda. You chose to betray me with someone I trusted. This isn't something we can just work through." I said it flatly, without hesitation. Her expression turned from pleading to anger, and she shot back, "You're being ridiculous. How can you throw away everything we built for a few stupid messages?" "Stupid messages," I countered, my voice rising. "You made a choice, and you have to live with the consequences. I'm done being the one who gets hurt." It felt liberating to finally stand up for myself. I was no longer willing to be manipulated by her lies. I could see she was frustrated, and while part of me felt guilty for not giving her the chance to explain, I knew deep down that I was no longer interested in her explanations. I needed to prioritize my own healing. As the days turned into weeks, the emotional fog began to clear. I was no longer a passive participant in my life. I was actively choosing to rise above the betrayal. As I continued to assert my independence, I felt a newfound clarity settle over me. It was as if a weight had been lifted. I dove into my work with vigor, focusing on my career and setting new goals. My performance improved, and my boss even took notice, offering me opportunities for projects that I had previously shied away from. It was exhilarating to feel that surge of ambition and confidence again. Meanwhile, Amanda's behavior only grew more erratic. She attempted to manipulate situations to elicit sympathy, often trying to play the victim. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find her sobbing on the couch. "Jake, I'm so lost without you," she cried, her eyes puffy and red. I just want us to be happy again. Can't we go to counseling together? I felt the anger bubbling again. Counseling? Really? With the man you were cheating on me with? I shot back, incredulous. You think I'd ever trust you again? You don't get to dictate the terms of our relationship anymore. To my surprise, she took a dramatic turn, throwing her hands up in frustration. You're being completely unreasonable. I'm trying to save our marriage, but you keep pushing me away. I rolled my eyes. It was as if she was so wrapped up in her own narrative that she couldn't see the absurdity of her claims. It was becoming clear to me that Amanda was not just avoiding responsibility. She was actively trying to rewrite the story of our lives to paint herself as the wronged party. I felt a mix of anger and pity for her. How could she not see the damage she had done? I realized that she was not the woman I had fallen in love with. In this moment, I understood that my journey wasn't just about healing, but also about recognizing the reality of who she had become. As the weeks progressed, I embraced my new single life. I reconnected with old friends, went out more, and even started exploring hobbies I had long abandoned. I took up painting, something I hadn't done since college. The canvas became a space for my emotions, a way to express everything I had bottled up inside. Each stroke was an act of liberation, allowing me to confront my feelings head-on. One sunny Saturday, I met up with Brian and his girlfriend, Sarah, at a local art fair. As we wandered through the stalls, I felt a sense of joy I hadn't experienced in a while. I chatted with artists, learned about their creative processes, and even purchased a small painting that spoke to me. It was a vibrant piece, full of color and life, exactly how I wanted to feel moving forward. As we sat down for lunch, Brian asked how I was handling everything. Honestly, it's getting easier, I admitted. I'm finding a sense of purpose again. It feels good to reclaim my life. Good for you, man. You deserve to be happy, Sarah chimed in, and I could see the warmth in their eyes. It felt reassuring to know that I had a support system behind me, even as I faced the heartache of my crumbling marriage. But just as things were looking up, Amanda pulled another stunt. One evening, she barged into my room while I was painting. "Why are you doing this to us, Jake?" she demanded, her voice shaky. "Can't you see how much I've changed? I want to make this work. I can't stand the thought of losing you." I put down my brush and faced her, my heart racing. "You don't get to decide how this ends, Amanda. You made your choices. You chose to betray my trust." I felt a rush of emotion as I spoke. "You're not the victim here. You don't get to play with my feelings just because you're having regrets now." I could see her mask slipping. For a brief moment, the desperation in her eyes was replaced by anger. "You think you're so high and mighty, don't you? Just because you've found some new hobbies doesn't mean you're better than me." The conversation devolved into a heated argument, and I felt a mix of frustration and pity. Here was a woman who had lost so much, but instead of taking responsibility for her actions, she was lashing out, trying to pull me down to her level. I knew I had to draw the line. "Listen, Amanda," I said, my voice firm. "I'm done with the games. I'm moving on, and you should too. I can't keep engaging in this toxic cycle. If you want to fix yourself, do it for you, not for me." With that, I left the room, feeling both relieved and drained. I had finally spoken my truth, and it felt liberating. But the reality was that Amanda was still deeply broken, and I couldn't save her. I could only focus on my own healing. That night, I went back to my canvas, pouring my emotions into it until the early hours of the morning. I painted until my heart felt lighter. Each brushstroke was a release, a way of letting go of the weight of betrayal. I realized that while Amanda's actions had hurt me, they had also awakened a strength within me that I didn't know existed. I was no longer just a victim of my circumstances. I was the architect of my future, and I was determined to build something beautiful from the rubble. As the days turned into weeks, my life began to take on a new rhythm. I thrived in my solitude and relished the freedom from Amanda's emotional chaos. I was rediscovering myself, piece by piece, and I felt a sense of clarity that had long eluded me. I started to build a new routine filled with activities that brought me joy and fulfillment. I continued to paint, pouring my heart into my artwork. Each canvas became a testament to my healing. Some days I would create vibrant scenes filled with life, while other days, my work reflected the darkness I still felt inside. It was a cathartic process that helped me process my emotions and reclaim a sense of control over my life. On weekends, I enrolled in a local art class, meeting others who shared a passion for creativity. It was a refreshing change of pace, and it felt incredible to be part of a community again. At work, I found myself taking on new responsibilities, and my boss noticed the shift in my demeanor. One afternoon, as we reviewed my latest project, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Jake, I've been meaning to tell you, you've really stepped up lately. Your work is impressive, and I think you're ready for a promotion." The words washed over me like a wave of validation. It felt good to know that my efforts were being recognized. I realized that while Amanda had tried to tear me down, I had risen above it. I had transformed this painful experience into fuel for my personal and professional growth. However, even in this spirit of newfound independence, I couldn't completely escape Amanda's grasp. She would still try to reach out, often with desperate texts that ranged from apologies to angry accusations. "You're being heartless. I can't believe you're just going to throw away everything we've built like this." I didn't respond. I had learned that engaging only fed her need for attention and drama. One evening, I returned home after a long day at work to find Amanda sitting on our front porch, waiting for me. I felt my heart race as I approached. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I wanted to talk," she said, her voice shaky. The vulnerability in her eyes was hard to ignore, but I steeled myself against the instinct to feel pity. "I've been seeing a therapist," she continued, "and I think I've finally realized how messed up I've been. I want to make things right." I took a deep breath, unsure of how to respond. "Amanda, I genuinely hope you are working on yourself, but that doesn't change what you did to me. I can't just forget how you betrayed my trust." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know. I'm not asking for us to get back together right now. I don't want to be the person I was. I want to be better." Her words stirred something in me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give her a chance to redeem herself and to fix what was broken. But the other part of me, the part that had been bruised and battered, reminded me that trust cannot be reestablished so easily. Even if you're sincere, Amanda, it's going to take more than just words. You need real changes in your life, not just for me, but for yourself. She looked down, defeated, and I felt a pang of guilt. I had once loved this woman deeply. Watching her fall apart was painful, but I also understood that I had to protect myself. I was no longer willing to sacrifice my happiness for someone who had so carelessly trampled on my heart. Days later, I found myself standing in front of my canvas, the colors swirling together as I pondered my next steps. I had been thinking about the idea of closure. I realized that I didn't need to hold onto the anger I felt toward Amanda. I could choose to let it go and move forward with my life. Embracing this new mindset, I decided that it was time to have one final conversation with her. I wanted to express my feelings clearly and establish a boundary that would allow me to truly heal. I sent her a text, asking her to meet me at a local park. When we met, the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken words. "Amanda, I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "I've realized something important. I need to let go of the resentment I feel toward you. Holding on to anger will only hurt me in the long run." She listened intently, her expression serious. "I get that, Jake. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I want you to know that I'm working on becoming a better person. I'm taking steps to change." "I appreciate that," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But I think we both need to go our separate ways. I need this time to focus on myself, and I hope you can use this opportunity to truly work on your own growth." Amanda nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I understand. I'm so sorry for everything, Jake. I never meant to hurt you." Her sincerity brought a wave of emotion, and I felt a mix of sadness and relief. This would be our final moment together, and I wanted to leave with no bitterness. "I hope you find happiness, Amanda. I really do." We parted ways, and as I walked away from that conversation, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I had said what I needed to say, and I could finally begin to close that chapter of my life. The road ahead was mine to navigate, and I was determined to make it a beautiful one. With every stroke of my brush and every step I took, I felt myself healing, transforming the pain of betrayal into a canvas of possibilities. The weeks that followed my conversation with Amanda marked a new chapter in my life. I felt lighter, as if I had shed the weight of the past that had clung to me for so long. I started waking up each day with a renewed sense of purpose, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe deeply without that constant ache in my chest. I continued immersing myself in my art, spending hours at the studio and experimenting with new techniques. I even began showcasing some of my work at local galleries. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and I relished the joy of sharing my creations with others. It was a liberating experience, one that reinforced my belief in my own worth and talent. I also nurtured the friendships I had neglected over the years. Brian and Sarah became my go-to support system, dragging me out of my shell and encouraging me to explore new experiences. With them, I found myself laughing more, enjoying life in ways I hadn't allowed myself to for years. Whether it was going hiking, attending art exhibits, or simply grabbing dinner, every outing was a reminder of the connections I had once taken for granted. But even as I moved forward, remnants of my past still lingered. Amanda's text messages sporadically popped up on my phone, often filled with apologies or vague attempts to reconnect. At first, I was tempted to respond. Part of me still felt that old instinct to comfort her, to be the person she turned to in her moments of distress. However, each time I read her messages, I was reminded of the hurt she had caused me. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was trying to manipulate my emotions once again. One evening, after a successful art exhibit, I received a text that caught me off guard. "Jake, I really need to talk. Can we meet?" I felt a rush of anxiety wash over me. Did she really think she could disrupt my peace after everything that had happened? But I also felt a twinge of curiosity. Perhaps she had come to a deeper understanding of herself. After some deliberation, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. I walked in, my heart pounding, unsure of what to expect. Amanda was already there, fidgeting with her cup as she glanced nervously around the room. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, her voice shaky. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last spoke." I nodded, not wanting to jump to conclusions. "What's on your mind?" "I've been going to therapy, and I'm finally realizing the depth of my issues," she began. "It's not just about what happened between us. I've struggled with my self-esteem and my ability to connect with others. I thought I could fix everything by pretending it didn't matter." Her admission surprised me. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the reflection of someone who was genuinely grappling with her demons. It was a stark contrast to the woman who had once laughed in my face. But while I appreciated her honesty, I also knew that my well-being had to come first. "I'm glad to hear you're taking steps to change," I replied cautiously. "But I think it's important to recognize that this journey is yours, Amanda. I can't be the person you lean on anymore." She looked down, her brows furrowed with a mix of sadness and acceptance. "I understand. I just wanted to tell you how sorry I am for everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I'm working on being better." I took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of empathy and resolve. "I appreciate that, but I can't just overlook what happened. It's going to take time for me to heal, and I need to focus on my own growth. I hope you can find the same for yourself." We shared a moment of silence, and for the first time, it felt like we were both acknowledging the reality of our situation without the shadows of manipulation and blame. After what felt like an eternity, I stood up, ready to leave. "Take care of yourself, Amanda. I wish you the best." As I stepped out into the cool evening air, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had faced my past head-on, and while the pain of betrayal would always be a part of my story, I was no longer defined by it. I was moving forward with my life, and I felt empowered to continue building the future I wanted. Over the coming months, I immersed myself further in my art and my career. My paintings became more vibrant, capturing the essence of my journey. I received inquiries from larger galleries, and my passion for art began to flourish in a way I hadn't thought possible. I remained steadfast in my pursuit of happiness, learning to embrace my own desires and needs without guilt or hesitation. But amidst my successes, I also learned to take moments of pause. I took long walks in nature, spent weekends exploring new cities, and allowed myself to feel the full spectrum of emotions, from joy to sadness to everything in between. Each moment was a reminder that life was a tapestry woven with both light and dark threads. As I stood in front of a canvas one evening, I reflected on everything that had transpired. I could see how Amanda's betrayal, while painful, had catalyzed a transformation within me. I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and deeply aware of my own worth. I was no longer just a bystander in my life. I was an active participant, ready to embrace whatever came next. With each brushstroke, I painted not just a picture but my future, a future filled with creativity, authenticity, and a renewed sense of self. I knew that while I had faced darkness, I was stepping into the light, ready to embrace whatever the world had to offer. As the seasons changed, so did my life. I had embraced the transformation that came from healing, and I was no longer haunted by the ghosts of my past. I dove deeper into my art, and the canvas became a sanctuary, a place where I could explore my emotions without judgment. I found joy in the process of creation itself, and with each painting I was telling my story, one of resilience, growth, and self-discovery. A few months later, I received an invitation to showcase my work at a prominent art fair in the city. The news sent a thrill through me. This was a significant milestone, one I had been working toward, and it felt surreal to think that my art would be displayed alongside established artists. I poured myself into preparing for the event, spending late nights in the studio, fine-tuning each piece. On the day of the fair, I arrived early to set up my booth. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, and as I hung my paintings on the walls, I felt a rush of pride. This was my moment, a culmination of everything I had been working toward. Brian and Sarah showed up to support me, and their enthusiasm was infectious. We laughed, reminiscing about the darker days and celebrating how far I had come. As the doors opened and attendees began to filter in, I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. People wandered through the aisles, stopping to admire my work. The conversations flowed, and I shared the stories behind each piece, weaving in the journey of heartbreak and healing that had inspired my art. It was empowering to stand in front of my creations, speaking openly about my experiences and how they shaped me. Midway through the day, as I was discussing one of my pieces with a couple of visitors, I spotted someone in the crowd who made my heart skip a beat. Amanda had entered the fair, looking around nervously. For a moment our eyes locked, and I could see a whirlwind of emotions play across her face: curiosity, regret, and maybe even admiration. I felt a surge of adrenaline, but I remained composed. The moment felt surreal, and I knew I had a choice. I could either let her presence disrupt my newfound peace or rise above it. I chose the latter. I focused on the conversations around me, allowing the energy of the fair to envelop me once more. Eventually, Amanda approached my booth, her demeanor tentative. "Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I just wanted to say how proud I am of you. Your work is incredible." I studied her for a moment. This Amanda was different from the one I had once known. She seemed genuine, and perhaps this encounter was an opportunity to embrace the closure I had long sought. "Thank you, Amanda. It means a lot to hear that from you," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I've been working on myself," she added, glancing at my paintings. "It hasn't been easy, but I'm trying to be a better person. I realize now how much I hurt you and how wrong I was." Her sincerity cut through the air, and I felt a mixture of empathy and strength. "I appreciate you saying that. It's taken me a long time to heal and find my footing again," I said, maintaining eye contact. "But I've learned that I deserve to prioritize my own happiness. I hope you find yours too." With that, she nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I hope you continue to thrive, Jake. You deserve all the success and happiness in the world." As she turned to walk away, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about acknowledging the past and moving forward. I had transformed, and while Amanda would always be a part of my story, she no longer defined it. The rest of the fair unfolded with a sense of euphoria. People engaged with my art, and I felt a surge of exhilaration as I shared my journey. Some potential buyers expressed interest, and by the end of the day, I had sold several pieces. The validation was overwhelming, and I reveled in the sense of accomplishment. As I packed up my booth that evening, Brian and Sarah celebrated with me, their enthusiasm infectious. "You killed it today, man. This is just the beginning for you," Brian exclaimed, clapping me on the back. I couldn't help but smile. "Thanks, guys. I really couldn't have done this without your support." Driving home that night, the city lights twinkling around me, I felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over me. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever the future held. I had learned that the most important relationship I would ever have is the one with myself. And as the night deepened, I made a silent promise to keep nurturing that relationship through art, friendship, and self-love. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to navigate it with resilience and hope. This was my life, and I would continue to paint it however I saw fit. The canvas was mine, and it was time to create a masterpiece.